There we go. So thanks for reminding me to record. I always forget.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, my name is Hayley Tate. I'm the CEO and founder of the Tangaroa Blue Foundation. I would like to start by acknowledging traditional custodians on the land on which we're meeting on today, and I'm joining you from Gia and Naro country up in the Whitsundays, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Wanted to catch up today in regards to Project ReCon. Before we kick into that, we'd just like to do a bit of an introduction for everybody so we know where you're based and what your role is and how you're kind of connected. We want to continue to develop the relationship that we have started with FRDC, and we've met a lot of different offices in different places, so it's good to find out where everybody is. So Felicity, do you want to start off?
Yeah, obviously we've, connected in the past, but yeah, I've spent, my entire history really in the commercial fishing industry. It's where I, grew up in Dongra, north of Perth. And so I spent a lot of time working at WAFIC in the last 6 years before joining FRDC. I was working with the Shark Bay prawn fishery around there and dealing with things like their sustainability and their Marine Stewardship Council certification, and really, that was a really great experience working with those guys. Obviously now with FRDC, so that's sort of, really just, I'm just really looking forward to working with you guys, because I think there's, there's a really close relationship there and lots of work to be done. So
awesome, thanks Felicity. And Nathan?
Hello, nice to meet you both. So I'm Nathan Bicknell. I'm South Australian's Extension Officer for FRDC. My story is very similar to Felicity's. It's spooky actually. I grew up in Port Lincoln in South Australia. Dad was a rock lobster fisherman, so I spent all my youth on and around the water on boats, whatnot. Unfortunately, being colourblind, I can't drive a boat commercially, so otherwise I'd be retired. So I went and studied for a while different things, design, which is the same as Felicity, which is funny. But then I did marine science up at Southern Cross, and from there I've worked for AFMA as an observer. Then I went back to South Australia as the CNET officer, so with Ocean Watch for a number of years. And then I started getting into the representative structures. So I worked as the executive officer for Marine Fishers Association, so small scale fishers, about 300 license holders at the time. And from, then into this gig. So very similar in that sense, but so strong commercial background, and looking forward to seeing how we can. I've kind of seen things that you guys have been doing around the periphery, and right back to Ocean Watch days actually. So
we've had
a
long relationship with Ocean Watch as well. CNET officers in WA as well, because they were hosted back in the day as well.
I interviewed those guys and I was on the Watch board, so we've all had a connection with those. They're a great organisation.
Absolutely.
And we were up in Nhulunbuy for 6 months while my wife Sarah has a job at the hospital, which is cool. And so I'm working very remotely at the moment. So lots of this sort of stuff. So
that is not the scene outside your window.
No, it's tropical and steamy, but
awesome. And Lincoln?
Great to meet you both. I do not have a commercial fishing background. I'm Canadian, but I have been in Australia here for 6 years, based here in Perth. I just finished my PhD at UWA in marine science, focusing on the impacts of vessels on marine life. But I have been working for Tangaroa Blue for almost 18 months now on marine debris work. So working with Project ReCon and lots of the other projects that we have going. So excited to see how we can all continue to work together.
Awesome.
Awesome. So I just have some slides to go through just to keep us a little bit on track on this particular project, but I think there's lots of other things that we can discuss and explore moving forward as well. Can you guys see the slides there?
Yep.
Excellent. Jump in if you've got questions rather than kind of officially waiting or anything like that. It's kind of good to chat through. And if I look like I'm sideways, I've just got multiple screens. So sorry about that. So Project ReCon is a project that we have been running now for about 12 months. It kind of stemmed from the fact that we kept finding these trackers. We didn't know where they were coming from. We didn't know what we could do with them. We had tried to reach out to some companies that we had found their names associated with the boys and not got any traction at all. And so eventually we were able to kind of get into one of them. And Brett, who is my husband but also works for Tangaroa Blue, found a SatLink name on it and actually took photos of all the components and sent them an email and said, you know, we're finding lots of these trackers. Looks like there's some really cool tech in there. Can you let us know what each bit is? We're going to try and recycle or sell it off in Australia so that it's diverted from landfill. And quite quickly we got a response from SatLink to said, we prefer that you didn't do that. Let's jump on a call. And Project ReCon was born out of those initial discussions, and now we have an amazing relationship with them. Being able to divert this particular item from our cleanups from landfill and giving it a second life. Currently, we have a small grant, which is through the Global Ghost Gear Initiative and Ocean Conservancy to help us fund it in Northern Australia. We also have a little bit of funding through our Reef Clean funding, which is along the Great Barrier Reef to help roll this out. We believe that this program is very much suited to either a sponsorship model or another funding source, because it is going to be ongoing, and the more capacity, the more buoys we find, the more that we can repurpose and get out there. So just to give you a little bit of background of Tangaroa Blue, in case you haven't known us from way back like Felicity, registered charity founded in 2004 in the southwest of WA. We coordinate a program called the Australian Marine Debris Initiative. That's basically a network of partners, and those partners are from community, volunteers, other NGOs and community groups, businesses, industry bodies, and all layers of government. And the idea is that if we can all collect data using consistent methodology, house it in one spot, then we have a much more comprehensive data set to be able to inform what needs to change, because what we find in Cape York is completely different to Port Phillip Bay in Melbourne, and also more importantly to monitor the impact of any mitigation strategies that are implemented to make sure they are actually working. So the AMD looks at removing marine debris from the environment, and that's anywhere in the catchment. So it's not just beaches, although they tend to get most traction because they're the most funnest place to do a cleanup. But we do cleanups in estuaries, mangroves, waterways, stormwater drains, anything that has the potential to end up in the marine environment. And then we record it and put it into a database, the AMD database. So we have about 3,500 partner organisations that have contributed into the database. So it's not all Tangaroa Blue events. And we use that to track to the source wherever possible. And that gives us an idea of who do we need at the table to have a conversation about figuring out how to stop it from being released in the future. So we have a very broad stakeholder group to be able to do that. And so these are just basically the steps. You need to have cleanups, but if all you do is clean up, that's all you'll ever do. So it gives us the opportunity to sort, separate, collect good data, input it into the AMD database, track to the source, figure out who do you need at the table to create a source reduction plan, and then continue that process to monitor the impact and make sure that you've got it right. So this Project ReCon is part of a source reduction plan to try and reduce the amount of commercial fishing beacons that we're finding in the environment, and also to give them another life. And this has been an amazing collaboration with SatLink. This is Kat, she's the head of science. and sustainability. I think her role is with Satlink. She's based in Spain. Satlink's an international tech company that was founded in 1992, and they provide technology solutions for the fishing industry. They're based in Madrid, but they have offices in other parts of the world as well. And they are really committed to sustainability and sustainably fishing tuna. And this project has totally aligned with that, which is enabled us to build a pretty unique collaboration here. I think there's a little bit of a diagram here that Satlink put together about Project ReCon. The model for ReCon was actually designed by Tangaroa Blue and Satlink together. And so once this has been developed and coordinated, they're looking at rolling it out in other countries as well with partners on the ground. Tangaroa Blue's territory to roll out the project is Australia, but also Papua New Guinea. And we actually have some partners up in the conflict islands that are also part of Project ReCon, as well as nationally. And to date, there's more than 22 international fishing fleets that have signed up to the program, and that equates to more than 100 international commercial fishing vessels. So the idea is that a company and a vessel will sign up to the program, and what that means is that if we find one of their trackers on the beach or during a cleanup, they have already given permission for that to be reassigned to Tangaroa Blue from an ownership perspective, because just because it's washed up on a beach, it doesn't mean that we can just put salvage rights over it. Basically, it's still owned by the company because they know where it is. They're just choosing not to come and get it. So we need to have that ownership transfer formalized before anything else can happen. So when we first started, we had, I think it was 16 companies that had signed up pretty quickly. There was 40 odd vessels, and that's just exponentially growing now. And some of the biggest commercial fishing fleets in the world that have signed up. Once the trackers have been identified through their serial number, we go back and let Satlink know what the serial number is. They see whether the buoy is in the project or out, and then we go through some testing, so some structural testing and satellite testing to make sure that it's still operational. And once that happens, then we can use it. So we rebrand it and we distribute it to our marine partners who are working out on the water. The goal is that if they come across a ghost net or a large piece of marine debris that they can't immediately remove because of the size of what they've found and the capacity of the vessel, they can immediately attach a tracker to it and let us know, and we switch on the satellite, and that means it doesn't get lost while an appropriate vessel is coordinated to go and remove it. And that's what we've heard loud and clear, is that a lot of times ghost nets and other large items are reported, and by the time a vessel is able to go and get it, nobody can find it anymore. And so that's a big issue. So that's addressing that. The really good thing with these trackers is they have solar panels on them. So they're not going to run out of battery. And that's the other thing that we found and heard, that there are some other tracking projects that are happening out there, but there's been several instances where nets have been lost because the battery just stopped working, and so they lost the net. So in this instance, we can actually see the battery power on the back end, and it's solar paneled. So every morning when the sun comes up, it charges back to 100% again, which is great. So that's kind of the reuse for the tracking side of things. And then we're also looking at ways of recycling those items that might be broken or can't or don't pass through that testing phase. So we kind of feel like it's a really unique experience, or a unique project to be able to reuse a piece of marine debris from the commercial fishing industry to, to track ghost nets and other large marine debris items for good. So I'm sure you guys are well aware of the ghost net issues, that they are considered one of the most damaging types of plastic marine debris to marine life, and they can drift for days or years and just continually keep killing. And it's estimated about 2% of all fishing gear is lost to the ocean annually, and that equates to quite a significant amount of gear that is continually fishing on its own. We know that the Gulf of Carpentaria is a known ghost net hotspot. We've been working with the rangers in both Nhulunbuy and in Mapoon for a long time, and that current that comes in from the Arafura Sea that goes into the Gulf and hits the west coast of Cape York first around Mapoon and then swirls around the bottom of the Gulf and then back towards Nhulunbuy, is significantly impacting with ghost nets. And there's been some pretty significant research showing that the numbers of turtles, for example, that are killed every year by floating nets is a real impact to their species populations. So this is the collaboration between Tangaroa Blue and Satlink, and it'll allow those international fleets to approve any of their buoys being found to be reassigned to us. And that's basically what the tracker looks like. It has a little serial number there in the middle, and that's how we are able to find out which buoy or which commercial fishing fleet that it belongs to. And so this is one of the nets that we were able to put a buoy onto that was unable to be removed. And it's as far as attaching it, we've now repurposing actually some shark clips onto the buoys to make it really easy to attach to the net in 2 different locations, so that even if one got ripped off, it's still really stable. And as long as it's floating upright, obviously it gets that solar panel getting the batteries charged every day. So when we find a buoy, or when our partners find a buoy, we collect additional information than just about the tracker. There are multiple companies that produce these kind of buoys, so not all of them can be repurposed at the moment, but we're hoping that with more and more of the tuna fleets hearing about this program, that the other companies will be keen to get on board as well. Currently, we are working just with Satlink. On the East Coast, the Satlink buoys equate to about 80% of the buoys that we find, so that's pretty good. We've actually got a lot of them coming through, but this just shows you the other designs, and they all have a buoy ID number on them, and that helps us understand which company that they were manufactured by, and then obviously tracking it back to the commercial fishing vessel that owns it. The other data that we collect is GPS points, the date, contact info, if there's any paint marks or names written on it, and what kind of habitat it was found in, and what it was attached to as well. And that can just be sent through, and that gets attached to submitted into the Australian Marine Debris Initiative database as well. And that enables us to find out, whether that's able to be checked for use in the program. A lot of the trackers that we're finding are attached to FADs, so we do like to get a bit of information about the FAD itself as well, what it's made of, what the materials are, whether it has a tail on it, and so forth. We just recently found out that metal object that's in the top right hand corner is a FAD itself. That was actually found up in the Torres Strait quite a few years ago, and the rangers were concerned that it might have been some kind of explosive. So we were trying to figure out what it was, but apparently that's a FAD as well. So they come in all shapes and sizes, basically, and quite a lot of them still have that tracker attached to them. As far as I'm aware, though these type of devices and these FADs are not used in the Australian fisheries or the commercial fisheries. They are all international fisheries. So we also, with the FADs, collect data, where it was found, was it found with a buoy, the date, contact info, and what habitat that was on as well, any damage, and of course any wildlife impacts that the person notes. And these are, a wide variety of pretty, I guess, basic kind of systems to more designed and more structural items. Some of the stuff that we find in the Gulf is, tied together with little bits of fishing line, and that's about it. And the rest of it can be quite large items. Other data that we collect is the shape, the size, and what kind of information you can get about the net itself in regards to the square size and the twine size and so forth. And we use that Ghost Nets Australia methodology around collecting that information. Some of the different material types of the rafts, a whole heap of different materials, and some of them have that submerged tail and the different materials of that as well. I'm sure you guys are familiar with FADs and the impacts that they can have on marine life, we do find quite a lot of FADs with the tails snagged up on the Great Barrier Reef. And we're finding lots and lots and lots of the trackers as well. We do a chopper survey between Cooktown and the tip of Cape York every year to grade the marine debris loads in areas you can't get to by boats or by road. And I think in the last chopper survey we did in June, there was over 300 of these round trackers that we were able to see from the air. So that's obviously going to be an underestimate to how many were under trees or pumice or sand. But that's quite a large number to have from that area. We know that most of them are coming from the South Pacific fishing grounds. So to assess the buoy, it needs to sit in sunlight for 48 hours to make sure that the solar panels are charged before we can test it. We also get the anti-foul removed just using a high pressure hose. So all the biofoul and the algae barnacles are all removed. Need to check if there's any cracks, missing parts, check that it's still going to be waterproof. And if you're not sure, then you can just stick it in a bucket and put something heavy on the top of it and let it sit there for 24 hours and see if any water goes in it or not. So we want to make sure that it's waterproof. Just checking whether there's any damage or missing parts. So that white section that's underneath the bottom, that's the echo sounder. And then obviously the protection over the dome bit where the solar panels are. So just want to make sure that it's all good, and quite most of them we've actually got are actually structurally sound. There's not that many that are broken or busted up, which is great. We are working with the plastics industry and with SatLink to try and work out ways to recycle the ones that can't be repurposed. So they're diverted from landfill, and the tech inside them is, it's e-waste. So there's some opportunities there as well. To test the buoy, once it's been charged, is we just actually need a magnet, like not a fridge magnet, but like a 3 centimeter or so chunky magnet. And you can see that there's this little on-off tag here. And if you just hold the magnet over the top of the on-off tag for 3 seconds, something should happen. If you get a long beep and a long light flash, it means it's turning off. If you get 5 short beeps and 5 flashes, it means it's turning on. If you get 5 short beeps and 5 short ones and a long one, along with the flashes, it means that there's an error trying to turn it on or off. So you should try it again. And normally that's because you've held the magnet on it for too long. And 3 short beeps and 3 short flashes means that the unit can't see the satellite. So you need to take it out from the shed and take it outside so it can see the sun. And go from there. So pretty easy to test it from a turning on and off perspective that way. We have participants who would like to host one of these on their vessels. We ask them to sign an agreement and just to go through an hour commitment for us to talk them through how to use it, how to turn it on, how to turn it off, how to maintain it. And some organisations have hosted several buoys, and so they've got a sign in, sign out process. So we've been working with, for example, Carpentaria Contracting up in Weipa, and they have 5 or 6 buoys now. If someone's taken their boat out just for the day, they can sign out a buoy and take it with them and then bring it back. So we're getting, vessels out there with buoys on them, just to make sure that we don't lose the items in event that they're found. And so those guys that are actually hosting them full time, same thing happens. We just run through with them how it works. And then they just need to let us know if they attach the buoy to something, and we can turn on the satellite and then we can start to watch it. We like to kind of have a check with those partners after 12 months just to make sure it's all going okay if they're finding things. And, we had our first win where Border Force came across a ghost net out or a FAD actually in Weipa, off Weipa just recently, and we were able to deploy our first tracker. And 3 weeks later, we had a big enough vessel to go and pull it out, and that's 3 ton of ghost gear that we were able to remove. So it was great to see that whole circle of finding it on a beach, checking it works, getting it out to a partner, having it deployed, checking on it through the satellite and the back end of the database, and then having it removed. So this was that particular buoy I was talking about. The back end of the data portal is quite impressive, and you can ask the tracker to let you know in whatever period of time its position. So you can say, I want a GPS location every hour, every 8 hours, once a day, once a week, whatever you want. So we initially had it pinging back to us once an hour. And then we realized it wasn't moving, it was snagged. And so then we pushed it back to once a day, just to keep an eye on it until we were able to get it removed. And this is what it looked like. It was a pretty nasty piece of kit. We worked with the Indigenous Rangers from Napranum, as well as the ABF and Carpentaria Contracting to get it out. And it was about 3 tonne of ghost gear in total. The buoys that can't be reused, we're putting into our reef cycle program, which is that plastics program. We're working with Operation Clean Sweep, with BC Plastics, with BASF, and one of our other fishing programs called Rig Recycle is part of that program as well. So just trying to divert as much of that marine plastics as we can in fit for purpose ways from landfill. So the wins for Project ReCon is ultimately the environment's the ultimate beneficiary. We know that ghost nets are a problem. We know that this kind of e-waste is a problem, and we're combining 2 of those to get them both out of the environment. So it's a win-win-win. We are super excited because about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, Project ReCon actually won the award for innovation in the tuna industry for 2023, which is a massive international tuna awards framework, and Project ReCon won it. So we were, we've had acknowledgement from the international tuna community that they are supportive of this program. We were all a little bit on edge on how this was going to be played out in the media, because we really need the commercial fishing industry to be supporting the program. Otherwise, if they don't hand over the buoys to us, we can't run this program. So we know that tuna fishing has lots of different types of, I guess, comments happening in the media, both positive and negative. And we wanted to make sure that we actually were able to get some wins on the board so that, we could continue to work on this program without the tuna industry getting a bit freaked out. So the fact that we won an international award is obviously amazing for that. And well done to Kat and Therese, who are the main drivers of this at Satley, but also their senior management to taking a bit of a gamble on getting a project like this up and running. It's been amazing to see fishing fleets continually sign on to the program and see the benefit of it. And so big thank you to those guys and all the rest of our partners that we collaborate with on the Australian Marine Debris Initiative, both in Australia and internationally as well. So that was pretty much the slide. So I'll stop sharing. And happy to take any questions.
Do you want to start, Nath, or I'm happy?
No, that's really great. I think it's an awesome. I love the loop in it, and I think there's obviously and we're going out in a couple of weeks for the last cleanup here with the range group out to east to Point Arnhem, which would be great. Cape Arnhem, sorry. So you guys involved with that group as well, or is that just a standalone sort of cleanup initiative?
Yeah, I mean, we have been in the past. I think that their capacity for the data collection is limited. So it's been difficult to get data from those cleanups submitted into the database, but I'm totally aware of them and have had discussions. Last time I was up in Nhulunbuy and we helped out with the big cleanup with the Timaru Rangers, and we met those crew as well. So we are looking for opportunities to have data collected from some of those cleanups. And when Lincoln went up earlier this year, it was about, we're kind of transitioning, I guess. When we first started, like, we needed data, and so we were doing cleanup events where everything was counted, and now we have 24 million data points. We can really start to transition into getting really good data, and we know that monitoring protocols around data collection give us a lot more valuable data, or robust data, I think. And so we've set up some monitoring protocols which go around transects. And so when Lincoln went up to Nhulunbuy, we were looking at setting up transects so that when they go and do their big cleanups, they don't have to count everything, but they can count just those things that are in the transects. And we would love to transition some of these community events to using a similar platform. So it reduces the amount of pressure on having to count everything, but you still get a really good data set.
Yeah.
And I think they're still weighing the bags and weighing what the total is outside of the transects, but just counting and drilling down into that high debris loads within the transects.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would be great to know if you guys are finding those trackers. What we would ultimately like to do is, at the moment, most of the trackers from the Cape end up at my place. I've got about 120 in my backyard to go through that testing phase. But we are setting up some hubs in different areas, particularly remote areas, so that if the trackers are found, they can be tested on site. So we'll work with that partner, and we've got a couple of trackers out on Cocos Keeling Islands in the Indian Ocean. So obviously we don't want to have to send them back to Perth for testing. So we've just trained a local community member in how to test them. And if they are then operational, then they can be created or made up so that they're ready to be deployed in the local community without having them to send new ones up or for them to be sent somewhere else. So the idea is for those remote locations is to get someone who knows how to do the testing. In the event that someone in their community finds them, that can be the first point of call, and we can work with them.
Yeah. Okay. Because I have no doubt that there's plenty lying around here in people's backyards and whatnot, and I'm sure they've collected a few over the years with beach cleanups, but I'm not sure what they actually do with the rubbish once they've collected it here. But I actually met Paul through footy up here, so and obviously there's not a lack of space to store things, so I think there'd definitely be opportunity, and I'd be happy to help in the sort of awareness raising of the program, and also talk to them about how there might be opportunity just to be, a collection point or a storage place for them to, in the first instance, because I know these things take time and you can't do it all at once, but I'd be more than happy to be, do something practical while I'm here on the ground.
That would be awesome. And Lincoln has created 2 documents. One's what do I do if I find one, and one's but how do I get involved in hosting one? And so she could email those to you guys, and as a resource, it's a start point. And what we did in Cooktown, for example, is when we had a local beach cleanup going on, we kind of let everybody know when we were promoting the event, hey, if you have one of these as well, it's really cool. So bring it with you to the cleanup and we can test it to see whether it works. And all of a sudden people are bringing them along with them from their backyard.
Yeah.
And we were able to tell them about what it was and what we were doing with them and do the testing right there. And then quite a lot of the times they would go, okay, well, we want to donate it to you because now we can give it another life. And we just thought it was cool and it's been sitting in the backyard, but it's just been sitting in the backyard. And so that way it's been a really good engagement. So maybe there's an opportunity to do something like that.
Yeah, I think, and obviously I'd be interested in how you guys would like to do it, but there's definitely opportunity here. I can guarantee there's heaps of them in town, and given it's a small town, like it's a pretty good social network here. Like if you put a shout out on their notice board for anything in particular, you get a response pretty quickly. So if there's like some information sheets but I suppose my questions would be to get the back end sorted out before you did that, because you end up with them like I'd end up with them all at my house otherwise.
So, I mean, one of the first things is if you did a shout, like for example, if you did a shout out on local socials and said, hey, has anyone found one of these? What's the serial number? So all of a sudden, first step is it in or out of the project? And that's the first test. So that before you even see it, second, has it got any cracks in it? Is it watertight? Is it broken? Or send us a couple of photos. So we can do a lot of that structural visual testing in the serial number testing before it even has to move from the person's backyard. And then if it progresses through those things where it's likely, then we can do the satellite testing from there.
Okay.
And I know when I was up there, Border Force was interested in participating as well, and we just haven't had a chance to have a meeting. They were waiting to see what their vessel was going to do about even hosting. But if they have a yard, like a work yard or anything, maybe there would be the potential of them helping store if people are donating them as well. So just need to
I'd say Demeroo would have plenty of facilities to do it as well, and I suppose it'd be good to have that synergy with their cleanups that they have too.
Absolutely.
It'd be interesting to know, like, I can imagine it's definitely a hazard for vessels and navigation as well. So, like, obviously being a port here is, Rio might, they're very proactive in funding and sponsoring things. So I think that they would be a good entity to go and talk to. You said it was like a good model for that sort of thing. So,
well, the other really cool thing with it is that we can set up virtual fences. So in the that a net is tagged or a ghost gear is tagged, and it looks like its trajectory might come into contact with the shipping lane or with sensitive reef or, some other significant location, we can set up a virtual fence to say when it gets 10 nautical miles off or 5 nautical miles off or whatever, we want to start to get alerts. So actually the up at Scarden, north of Weipa, we're working with transshipment services, and they actually pull quite a bit of gear out of the water, and they've taken 2 of our boys and they've just said, look, anytime anything is drifting towards the shipping lane or where we're doing our vessel movements, we would want to know. And we were like, well, that's easy. We can set up virtual fences directly around where your operations are. And it's not only just for those guys, but we would be letting AMSA know. We're connected with AFMA, with AMSA, with Border Force, obviously. And so making sure that ghost gear task force is notified, and for vessel safety is notified as well, what the trajectory is looking like.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it would just be a good opportunity to engage with the commercial sector that is here. Like, there's a few, I can tell just from the yard. There's also a couple of bigger mackerel boats that come into here to unload. So you've got the Wildcard and a couple of others, and I'm sure they're pretty proactive in that sort of space as well. So, but yeah, I suppose for me, it would be trying to work out how I can help rather than create more work for you, Lincoln. So, yeah, happy to take that offline and after the meeting and see how we might structure that. But yeah, I've been looking for something practical to do while I'm here, and it's always a challenge because the politics are pretty sort of outside of my scope. I'm not a local, I don't know what's going on. So, but yeah.
But our goal is to have as many trackers as that we can repurpose out on vessels, because that's where they are going to get used. And so as we get more and more coming in and tested, if they're operational, we just want to have partners that are keen to host a buoy on a vessel. Obviously, it needs to sit out in the sun somewhere so it can stay charged. And it's not large, so most boats that are of a commercial nature haven't had a problem in finding somewhere to kind of attach it to.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Heidi, I just want to ask about that. Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering if you see us as an opportunity, like as a conduit to the vessel owners to getting possibly involved. What's the criteria? Like, who is this best suited to? Are we looking at top end? Are we looking at? I'm just trying to understand if you're going to. Where would people be operating to best? I mean, we know that the ghost gear coming down from obviously northern countries is the key issue. So are you looking for operators in the Pilbara Kimberley region? Like, what? I'm just trying to get a sense of where, you know, who you're really targeting.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is that it expands nationally. At the moment, we've been focusing on Northern Australia because we are getting a significant amount of debris coming and ghost gear coming from the north. There is a lot of interest now in Indian Ocean, so that's why we're working on Cocos and Christmas Islands as well. We need to be mindful that if we have tagged a net, we need to have some kind of possibility of retrieving it.
Yeah.
You know, like, so if there's no point going and tagging a net like so far out into the open ocean where there's no way we're going to go and retrieve it, although it becomes a way to notify if there's navigational hazard items. So we are keen for any vessel that would like to host one, and it doesn't have to be commercial, it can be a private vessel, and that's why we have that tag in, tag out process, because what we found is so many people go, oh yeah, I've seen one of them, oh yeah, there was a net and I had to pull it off my prop and it was too big and I couldn't do anything with it, and so I had to let it go. So there is an engaged boating community out there. Anybody that wants to have a buoy, we're absolutely happy. And the more that we have engagement with commercial vessels that potentially are a bit bigger and have HIABs and cranes and so forth on them that may be able to also help with the retrieval side of things, then we start to be pulling that stuff out more effectively.
Yeah, I was just thinking that was the thing that came up in my head was, you know, we don't, I mean, when you look at our you know, Northern WA, we don't have hardly any operators now. Like there's literally a handful. I can count, you know, sort of count them on one hand, really. They're big vessels, but there's not many. And I think we'd be better off in a way almost, you know, putting this information out to the charter sector and the rec sector, who are, you know, they can't, obviously not in a position to retrieve stuff, but they're in a position to possibly tag it, as you say. Yeah. Maybe there's some collaboration to be done between those sectors and the big boats to potentially retrieve. I don't know, but yeah, that seems to me the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the East Coast, like we've got charter operators, we've got commercial fishers, and we've also got logistics marine operators as well. So we've got a bit of everything there that's going out. And I mean, that means we're more likely to come across something because you've got different boats going into different areas.
Yeah, what about, are you engaging with the oil and gas sector?
Just starting. Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm just thinking in terms of WA, I mean, they're the main marine users up north, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's really interesting that, and obviously there's a really close association between those guys and commercial fishing industry. I'm just wondering, there's probably would be a good space to, I mean, a lot of obviously the skippers that have worked in commercial fishing, like are in oil and gases, there's a lot of, you know, overlap and moving backwards and forwards. So yeah, they might do a bit of communication around that anyway. Yeah, that's really interesting thought.
Yeah, so we basically just thought the more people, more partners that are connected with the marine operators who know about the project, then there's opportunities that come up. There might be places where they're finding lots of these. There might be places where they're, you know, like the guys in Scarden, the guys from Border Force said, oh, we're always getting contacted by the marine crews in Scarden about ghost gear, and you know, there's nothing we can do about it. And we're like, okay, well, let's go and give them a couple of trackers. And now straight away, you know, they've started to look at not only pulling gear out that they can, but being able to then track the ones that they can't.
Yeah. Just how much gear, and when you find, I mean, I guess if they were to put a tag on this gear, like often how big I mean, I know you showed some photos, but are we talking really large infrastructure? Is it often really significant by the time?
Yeah, I think ABF and AFMA pulled out a 5-ton net last week. I saw come through on our socials. Yeah, so there is, I mean, football field plus kind of size nets out there. The FAD that we were able to get in the Gulf was 3 ton, but it was loops and coils of rope. It was shredded, cut up bits of tire. It was clearly a fad. And we found out afterwards that it had been spotted numerous times over the last 12 months. But every time somebody went to go and get it, they couldn't find it. And it was exactly that.
Yeah.
So when Border Force were like, we found it, quick, get a tag on it. And we're like, okay, now we're not going to lose it anymore.
So Lincoln, I'll catch up with you about this more in terms of how we might coordinate it on the ground here.
Absolutely.
I suppose it'll be important to know who you've already spoke to, so I'm not doubling over, etc. So
yep, I have spoken to Paul, and he said that during his time there, they actually haven't found any of the trackers yet. But yeah, I think that there would be the potential, as he was saying, they were getting their coxswains and they're planning to be out quite a bit more. So it would be a great opportunity for sure.
All right.
But yeah, happy to keep chatting.
Cool. Excellent.
So have you guys had any engagement with sort of the peak commercial, recreational bodies, etc. at this point?
We are, through the Rig Recycle program, having some discussions with some of the rec guys. I think Brett actually had a meeting with the chair of the Australian Recreational Fishing Foundation yesterday about Rig Recycle as well. So we are, and AFTA, we're an AFTA member as well. Yeah, so we are trying to work through those frameworks for Rig Recycle, and Project ReCon kind of sits next to it as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So I might just stop the video there. Thanks everybody for listening.